Audio's already going.
Okay.
That seemed so close.
Yeah. Well, what you do, I'm gonna have to probably work the audio over there.
Okay.
So
Okay, I'll just stay right here.
whatever works for you.
Okay.
I suppose we won't get to take very many notes, but
I'll move my stuff right here. It's okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Good. Good evening, folks. And thanks for coming out. I'm Jim Kavanaugh, Chair of the Administrative Services Committee. To my right is my colleague, Commissioner Mike Boyle. And we're joined by the Director of the Douglas County Youth Center, Mr. Brad Alexander, the Director of the Douglas County Public Properties Department, Mr. Jerry Leahy, the Director of the Douglas County 911 Services, and the Assistant, I'm sorry, Diane, what is your title?
Deputy Administrative.
And the Deputy County Administrator.
Thank you.
Diane Carlson. We appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and we're going to try to keep this on time. We're already a couple minutes late, but the idea here tonight, if you got a agenda or you can see, I guess it's not on the screen, I thought it was. The agenda for tonight is pretty succinct. We do some very specific things in the Administrative Services Committee. They pretty much all have to do with property that the county owns and develops. And as you probably recall, in 2016, the county floated a $45 billion public safety bond. It was approved by the voters of Douglas County. As a matter of fact, it carried in every precinct in Douglas County, and we're pretty proud of that fact. It was designed to upgrade some properties that we own at 156 in Maple and downtown here with the Douglas County Correction Center. It was also designed to upgrade our 911 system with a state-of-the-art system for 911, and that's part of the report here tonight. And to establish new state-of-the-art alert systems in all the fire stations. So we're happy to report that that bond is now in construction on time and on budget, and we're going to ask our public property director, who oversees this effort, to address us relative to the progress of that. I think that Mr. Leahy has some PowerPoint slides to show us, and Mr. Slater, the director, if he has something that he'd like to add after that, we'd be happy to have that. We are in the process of completing this as we speak, but it's a big project, and we started on it more than a year ago. It's coming along, and you can see, if you've got the copies of the timeline of the process that we are in, it's going to complete construction, reconstruction in 2019. So, Mr. Leahy, would you like to lead us through that?
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're going to have,
I think Jeff's
from up there, aren't you?
Well, I think Jeff's going to.
Oh.
Let me just say a couple things. The last time this committee met, I gave an update on construction at the West Maple campus. And I indicated that day that we were pretty sick and tired of the rain, which really put us well behind on concrete and paving out at the West Maple campus. So we got a break in the weather here the last 2 weeks or so, and got a lot of concrete poured. We'll put a few parking lots completed. Of note, I don't know if anybody is here from the treasurers, but they would be happy to hear that the drive-through venue at the treasurer's office has been completed. So waiting for that concrete to cure, get some folks back in out there to get on with the landscape work and some of the detail work. But as far as the schedule, it's on the sheets that hopefully some of you have. If we didn't have enough, if you can share. But it's pretty basic that we're into construction, and that's all going to be in the red. As the commissioner stated, we started last August, so we're in month 13 really. So we're at 64% completion. Our goal from the get-go has been to get this completed February of 2019. The yellow is the month of September, where we're at right now, and we're into finishing electrical and the interior, and those are the percents that take the longest, and everybody sees a lot of activity and thinks that we're moving right along. But when you get into a project and you get into the interior after the demo and the drywalling and the pulling of the cable and the electrical, it does take time. So that's where we're at out there. If there's any questions on that, or should I move to?
No, go ahead, we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
We'll move on to the correctional center, and because of the difficulty of a small department trying to manage two projects, Jeff McGill is probably more involved with the correctional facility construction, so I'll have Jeff give you an update on correctional construction.
While we're waiting on Mr. McGill, just a reminder, the Open Meetings Act is located on the wall over there, north side.
Jeff McGill, Douglas County Public Properties. Douglas County Correction Center project is in 2 phases. We completed phase 1, which was the annex building. It was built in 1988. We're starting the original building, which is 1976 vintage. As you can see, we're only 5% complete. It's very difficult construction, as this is phased in 10 phases because of the availability to get into a mod. So we have to do one at a time. So it's stretched out. The completion date is out to 9/2020. So we got to coordinate this very closely with the capacity of the facility. And as of now, we're just starting into phase 1. We completed a roof project down there that we could get out there early and complete without disturbing anything inside. So other than that, I think other than miscellaneous stuff that you guys really don't want to hear, we're on schedule and on time for that project, and we're basically kicking that off right now. Any questions?
Thank you, Jeff. We are particularly proud of this project because we see it as an example of smart financing, where we took a project that involved county-owned properties. We decided to refurbish and reuse what we already own. We packaged that into a bond issue. We put it on the ballot. We allowed you to vote on it. We supervise the construction ourselves through our very competent public property department. And as you heard, we're on budget and on schedule. We did all of this without raising property taxes. We see this as a great model going forward on maybe a project we'll talk about a little later in a couple minutes. So, I think that you have a couple of other items, Mr. Leahy, before we move on to the...
I do. I think you've seen this before, but if you've got your handout there, this is a updated square footage of the facilities that are questioned on whether it be justice or juvenile detention.
So if you go to, I guess it's page 3 in this document that hopefully you've got, you'll see Douglas County Justice Center, and basically this is the Juvenile Justice Center. We're transitioning into that discussion now. And what Mr. Leahy has provided us with are square footages for the offices as they exist now. County attorney, public defender, juvenile probation, juvenile assessment center, juvenile courts, and the Douglas County Youth Center. And then we have totaled those up, and then in an effort to look forward to accommodate future needs of those departments, should we relocate them in a new facility, we more or less arbitrarily added 20%. It's not chiseled in stone, but we know that we're gonna need more space for those departments going forward than we currently have. So that's what you see on that table. It's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, and it gets us to where we wanna go in the discussion going forward relative to the Juvenile Justice Center. Before we enter that discussion, and thank you, we've got a couple of things to frame that. I'd like to say we do have the director of our 911 center here, and I know he's got an obligation for a little bit. But if anybody would have any questions on that, Mr. Slater's here to answer those. I gotta say, you've been here, what, a year and a half? A little more. Okay. In that time, this gentleman has presided over a major transition in our 911 capacities. And we're on the brink of moving into a new state-of-the-art 911 center, as Mr. Leahy outlined, in the newly refurbished West Campus building. We're about 64% complete on that process. I've been out there a couple times, and David, you and I have toured that a couple times. And we look forward to having that open in the near future. I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add, or if there's anything from the public regarding 911, but I know that you're pressed for time here, so I wanted to give you that opportunity.
The biggest thing, I guess, is that we have, bids have been awarded already for the 911 center radio console and operator position equipment. So that bid's already been awarded just recently, and the bids have been awarded for the administrative area office equipment. So we're pretty much ready to go with the equipment, and we're watching the timeline close, and we'll be ready to transition in. It's a big step to transition a 911 center to another location, because it's so important not to lose anything in the time that you're doing the transition. You really can't shut down and grab your stuff and move over or anything. You have to make sure that everything on the end you're transitioning to is already working in place, and somehow transition so no one even notices it. So that's the importance of doing this in a systematic approach, so that we can do this and make sure that everything's in place at the right time. So, and to answer carry on from what you said, Commissioner, I think that the setup of the building and the equipment, I really believe will make us even more efficient than what we are now. So that's what our hopes are. What, Chris?
I just want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank David for the terrific job that he's done. He's really a real professional. We're very fortunate to have him there. But I do want to take the opportunity to ask him, I didn't tell him I was going to ask him this, but I know that he's done quite a bit trying to hire 911 operators, and if you give us a brief snapshot of that, because that's so critical, and also whether or not you're still taking applications.
Yes, we are definitely taking applications. We have a recruitment that ended just a day or two ago. We received a good number of applicants, but we're always looking for more. We're almost up to our full level, but our plan is to actually hire some extra people for attrition, because we know every year there's a percentage that people that are leaving and going to other jobs and other things in their lives, and that always put us behind. So what we want to do is hire the people for attrition to take care of that, so we have a consistent level of employees at all times. So we're kind of excited going forward here that we're able to become as efficient as possible.
And if someone wants to apply, what do they do?
Yes, if you contact the Douglas County Human Resources Department, they have an office here at the Civic Center. But if you, the best way to do it is watch NeoGov, that website. That is where all their advertisements for job openings are. And we're looking for people that can multitask and be able to handle a lot of stress. But on the other hand, it's people we're looking for can do a huge amount of good. Every day they're touching hundreds and thousands of people. We took 58,000 911 calls last month, just last month. And every one of those is an opportunity to provide a service to people that are calling and really need help. So that's the kind of people we're looking for.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Slater? If not, thank you for the great job you're doing. This is something that's gonna save lives, and we're pretty proud of this. Again, on time, on budget, without a tax increase, and you got to vote on it. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Give me a call or something. I will.
Commissioner
I
Cavan.
have been remiss in not introducing our clerk comptroller who's recording this meeting for posterity, Mr. Jan Esch. Jan, thank you.
Yeah, and actually I had something to add. It's Douglas County-NE/HR is how you can find the applicant. If you were interested in one of those operator positions, that's where we post our job openings.
And
Or you can call Dan on his cell phone.
stick around, he'll be on later. And I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't note that this is a public meeting and a copy of the public meeting laws are on the back wall. So, that said, I hope I haven't left anybody else out that is joining us here tonight in official capacity. I really appreciate folks taking this time after regular hours to come out and meet our bosses, you, the public. This is way more people than show up for our normal Douglas County board meetings. And this is a good example of why I plan on holding regular meetings of this committee anyhow, and urging the board to maybe do the same from time to time on the board. We work for you, and having the opportunity to have folks here when it's convenient for you, I think is our job. So thanks for coming. It's really good to see everybody here, and we look forward to a good informational session here tonight relative to the youth center. Regarding that, Mr. Leahy has a couple of more
I've got
slides
two.
to show us real quick, and then we'll hear from the director of the youth center, Mr. Alexander.
Yeah, I've got two shots here that may not show up well on the screen, but the first one is going to be the 42nd Street campus, let's call it. And obviously the youth center pretty much in the middle. Just to give you more of a snapshot of the campus.
That right there, well, it's not showing up on the screen.
Nope.
I guess. Nope.
Commissioner, you got it?
Doesn't work on the screen.
Yeah, well,
It
you're
works
right.
around the screen. Can you
It
see
doesn't work on the screen. In any event,
Anyway,
if
in the middle of
you
that
need to
picture.
share, in the middle is the existing youth center. And then the next one, then I'll give it up for Brad, is the downtown campus of all the facilities that have been discussed in the last 90 days, or 120. Obviously courthouse, civic center, MUD, which was in play at one point. And then the Block 18, which is the library, OHA 408, 420, and the larger OHA parcel there is also Douglas County. So that was purchased with the OHA building, which is right on Harney Street.
Thank you.
So with that, well,
Right. So this just kind of gives us an overview of the properties in question. Tonight is more specifically directed at the Douglas County Youth Center, which is, and Dan, maybe we could go back to that prior slide and show people. Douglas County Youth Center on roughly 42nd and Woolworth in the Field Club Morton Meadows neighborhood. It's smack dab in the middle of that picture. And if you can't see it on one of these, you can see it right in the middle because it has, in the middle of the youth center, kind of a red roof over one of the recreational facilities. The director of that since, I believe, the mid-90s has been Mr. Brad Alexander, and he does a great job. And he is here tonight to give us kind of an overview of where our youth center is and what it's all about, and be available for questions that we might have. Mr. Alexander.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brad Alexander. I am the director of the Douglas County Youth Center. Like Commissioner Kavanaugh said, I think today is September 25th, 24th. So Wednesday, I'll have my 22nd anniversary with the Douglas County Youth Center on Wednesday, the 26th. So we've got a PowerPoint presentation. We're going to focus on primarily one screen, and there are some handouts out there. I noticed that they're going pretty quickly, so hopefully you got one or you're next to somebody that has one and can look on, but it'll be up on the screen as well. And we're going to start with screen number 3. This is kind of a 10-year snapshot of the population at the Douglas County Youth Center. The number on the right, 2018, that 81 is our average daily population from January 1 through August 31st of 2018. The way that population breaks down by gender is, historically it's been about 75% male, 25% female. Today, interestingly enough, I looked and it was 17% female and 83% male, but more traditionally, we kind of expect about 75%, 25%. We have 10 12-bed living units, and then we have one 24-bed living unit. So you'd think we got 144 beds, but there was a federal act, it's called PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act. The juvenile facilities fell into under that later. And so we're in the process of becoming PREA compliant. The reason I mention that is we're no longer really a 144-bed facility, we're a 96-bed facility, because we have to have one staff member for every 8 kids. One staff member for 16 kids overnight. So that does have an impact on our ability to use all of those beds. If we have more than 8 kids in a unit, even though we have 12 beds, we have to have 2 staff members present on that unit at that time. If we move on to slide number 5, we talk about the population, and really for us, there's just a couple of things that impact our population. In general terms, there's a lot that goes into those, however. So it's obviously the number of kids that are coming through our door, and to some extent, I think even more importantly, is how long the kids are staying. And so you kind of see on that slide what our trend line has done over the last, since 2011. And then you'll notice the note, because obviously you see kind of a sharp increase between 2015 and 2017. We changed the way we figured that statistic during that time. We removed the kids that were at the youth center for less than 24 hours. This statistic gets to how good are we doing our job, how fast are we processing kids through the system. And so by including the kids that are less than 24 hours, that probably wasn't necessarily those kids that we really need to focus on. They're moving out pretty quickly anyway, so a better picture is to exclude those, and we did that, and so obviously that's going to drive that number up, which it did. This slide number 6, this is where the kids are at. We have kids that are in juvenile court, but they're not on probation. Today, that is 40% of our kids. We've got 75 kids over there today as we sit here. 39% of them are on probation, and then we have 21% are actually going through the adult system. And this breaks down further on slide number 14. And that's really where our kids are at. 47% are coming to us on new charges. CACUS, more traditional term, would be a warrant for unlawful absence. Those are also under probation, 24% there, violation of probation, 15%. Then you can see how the others kind of fall in line as well. So the kids that are going to court on any given day, we average about 4.5 kids that are transported from the Douglas County Youth Center down here to court. And there's a lot of information in here, and I've kind of feel like I've been jumping around a little bit, so I apologize for that. But hopefully those are some of the information that is of interest to you.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyle?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a question, Brad, if I could. You mentioned about 4.5 children, or 4 children are transported down to the juvenile court on a daily basis. What about, you know the numbers, and you wouldn't necessarily because they're not in their custody, but would you know the numbers of the children who are in the court upstairs? I'm trying to think of how many cases they might handle. I don't know, maybe I should ask the judge that. I used to know.
In juvenile court?
Yeah.
Ray Curtis would probably be.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, but there was some, just some talk about the number of children that were, having to be restrained when they were coming down, so it's really about 4 a day.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, 4.57.
Thank you.
And that was just kind of a snapshot for the month of August of 2018.
Thank you.
If I heard correctly, our average daily population is 80?
81.
81.
From January 1 through 2018.
And it's kind of been that way for a couple of years, right in there, is that right?
Yeah. This slide here that kind of, you'll notice some things that really kind of stand out, and I've been here long enough I can remember these things.
Hey, Brad, what page is that?
I'm sorry, slide number 3.
3, okay.
Sorry.
That's right.
So you see from 2010, a fairly significant drop from 2010 to 2011. Probation at that point in time decided we were getting a lot of kids that were coming in on failure to appear warrants, and it was a warrant, so they had to stay with us and go to court. Probation intake, they screen all kids except, well, they screen all kids now. At that time, they did not screen the kids that were coming in on a failure to appear warrant. And they asked the judges, and the judges were very receptive, if we could start screening those, give them a new court date, and not require them to show up at the youth center. And so that started happening at that time. The other significant drop is 2012 to 2013. There was legislation that passed that said that a status offender, so in juvenile court, a status offender is somebody who is, what they did was wrong only because of their age, they were truant, they ran away, those sort of things. They said status offenders could no longer be securely detained. And so you see a pretty significant drop from 2012 to 2013. So your baseline, I think, really, to be fair, should be 2013 going forward.
Okay. And those numbers are 2013, 73, 2014, 83, 2015, 76, 2016, 70, 2017, 82, and 2018, 81. So doing the old mathematical, throw out your highs and lows, it comes in right around 80, right?
I think you're probably pretty close.
And that's been stable there for the last 5 years. We had a much larger population, obviously, going back up in the 140s, back in the early aughts. And those mods those kids were held, have just basically been decommissioned. They're still in existence, but there's nobody in them, right?
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of times we've had some living units that we weren't using. We're going to be back on track with that 1-to-8 ratio next week, actually, and so at that point, all of those living units will be occupied.
So the same facility that we're talking about that Mr. Leahy showed the photo of, it's no bigger or smaller than it was back when it was holding 140 kids. than it is today when it's holding around 80 kids, right? It's the same size, it's the same facility. Okay. I don't know, but as long as you're there, and this could help us move kind of on schedule, move forward. If anyone from the public would have a question for Mr. Alexander, obviously he's the expert, has been at the youth center for decades, and we trust his judgment, and he's the man that does the day-to-day supervision of our youth who are in our care. So if you do have a question for him, now would be, I guess, the best time to ask that. And just come up to this podium and identify yourself, please. Yep, that's good.
Okay. My name is Brian Smith, 6516 Emmett Street. One of the things that we've seen is a presentation from the current Board of Commissioners and the Chin group that says they recommend a facility with 48 beds. So if we've got 77, 80 kids in detention, what happens when we have a facility with 48 beds but not enough room for 49 kids? I guess the question that's never been answered by the commission is, where do those kids go?
So us at the Douglas County Youth Center, we don't have a no vacancy sign. We make do. I know that there's a lot of work being done to speed things up and to get the kids going through the system quicker. That length of stay number that I mentioned, bring that down. The numbers aren't always real consistent, but a lot of times, if you can drop that length of stay by 1 or 2 days, you can reduce your population by up to 5 kids over the course of time. So I know that there's going to be efforts made to reduce that length of stay. And beyond that, I really don't. I don't have an answer.
But the reason, I'll stay up here. The reason I ask is that previously I had contacted your office, and the response back was, if we have overcrowding, we'll have to investigate sending kids to other detention centers in other counties. So I guess the question that I kept asking the commission, and I'll ask it again tomorrow morning, is that if we have overcrowding, if we have 80 kids in detention, where do they go? We're expecting more judges, we're expecting more attorneys, they need more space, but somehow we're not expecting more kids. So I guess my question is really, do we have an answer for where do they go if we have 80 kids and 48 beds?
I can tell you in October of 2007, excuse me, October of 2007, we had 167 kids in the facility. And so you end up having to bring in cots and doing other things. At that time, there was a lot of strain on the people that were working at the youth center and the kids as well, right? And so we went to the commissioners and asked for some additional help to better supervise those kids, and they stepped up and provided that. I don't know of another facility that's going to take our kids. If we were to reach out, quite honestly, Sarpy County is a staff secure facility. They're not going to take them. I don't know what Lancaster County's situation is, and the juvenile penitentiary is for kids that are in adult court, so I don't see that as an option either.
So, thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you, Brett. The truth of the matter is, Mr. Alexander is head of the youth center, and as you pointed out, he has no control, virtually no control, of who comes to the youth center. That's not his job. He's there to take care of whoever comes and shows up on his doorstep. We are trying to lower that number, and you can see over the years it's gone from that 167 kids in October of 07 to about 80 kids today, but there's a finite amount that we can do as the county board. So what it falls to us to do is the best by the kids that we have to take care of. And I think he's done a good job of that. And going forward, I think that we will do the best that we can to make sure that whatever facility we end up with is the best for the kids. As far as I'm concerned, the best for the kids, what that is what we are about in this process.
I just wanted to mention something, Mr. Smith, I asked that question from day one in these groups. I said, you know, what's happening here? We're going from numbers like 80-something, and we're going to be down to 46. How does that work? And the response I got consistently was that we are developing programs, or we have programs, that are remedies to children being placed in that facility in the first place. So we have a home program that's working in JDAI and all these places, some of which are more successful than others. And so they tell me that the numbers will come down once we get this built and we have these programs functioning. And so I'm a little bit skeptical because when I start asking questions again, I'm told if you add more space, they will come. So, I mean, to me, to build a facility with, particularly where it's located, that's in question anyway, but to build a facility that much smaller is really, you know, really not something I'm comfortable with because I don't think it will house whoever's there. And I do want to take just a moment to ask Mr. Alexander to go back to the microphone and tell me and the others in this room, if you can, just kind of a snapshot of who is in there. What are the offenses of the young people that are there? If you could do the full range, if you could kind of tell us why they're there.
So on slide 14, we already talked about that. That's a real kind of a general snapshot.
Yeah.
Slide 15, robbery is our most common offense of kids coming to us. This is the top 14 offenses, and it accounts for 84% of all admissions that are coming to us on new charges. And you can read them. Robbery, 15%, gun charges, 13%, assault and domestic assault, 10%, terroristic threats, theft, violent, unlawful taking, receiving stolen property, sexual assault, on down the line.
So most of these are serious offenses, that's why they're there. You don't have the status offenders there anymore. Okay. Thanks, that's what I wanted to bring out. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. We have one more presentation, and I'm going to give this as quickly as I can. And basically, this is something that we've been working on for months. This is the latest iteration of our best efforts to find what's best for the children in our care in terms of a youth center. So I don't know, should I do it here or there? Would be better. I mean, for going forward on it.
I suppose do it from here. Get there.
This? Technology, I love this. It's here to help us.
Jim, if you need some help, I'll help you.
Chips. You'll take sure you're in stress.
You want the thumb drive? And
Yeah, you got it.
Yes. Constance, oh, she had it. This is why we dress rehearsal the whole thing, so make sure that there was no snags. So, the Juvenile Justice Center alternative proposal has been developed, as I indicated, over months and months, primarily with the input of the community and many of these public hearings, with professionals from a broad array of disciplines, including architecture, engineering, law, development, government, juvenile justice. And what has come forward is an alternative to what was originally outlined in the Chin report as a $106 million project, has since been up to $120 million project, and which is actually more along the lines of $165 million that was referenced by HDR in an article that the World Herald ran August 10th, 2017, Mr. Burbach's article, by the way, where he quotes HDR as saying they propose the building of a juvenile justice complex for, I believe, $169 million. That's the ballpark that the alternative to this is in, and it's proposed to be done by a private corporation on a footprint that you saw Mr. Leahy put up across the street here. Some of the property we own, some of the property is private property and is being in the process of subjected to eminent domain. I oppose that. I believe that Commissioner Boyle opposes that, and tomorrow at our regular Douglas County Board meeting at 9 a.m., Commissioner Boyle's proposing a resolution to stop eminent domain of that property. And in order to accommodate our legitimate needs for Juvenile Justice Center, we have been working diligently for months, lots of people, at no taxpayer expense, to find a better proposal. And this is the campus that we're talking about. These two buildings right here, the OHA building and the .com building, we own. This is where we are right here, right now. This is the city county building, this is the courthouse. What we propose is to take the property that we already own, stop the eminent domain of this building, the parent building, and take this property that we already own, along with this parking lot that came with the OHA property purchased earlier this year, and do this. So this is the Juvenile Justice Center, which will serve the juvenile judges, the 6 courts currently on the top floor of the old courthouse. It has floors for all of them, plus the juvenile court probation offices, administration offices, hearing rooms. It also encompasses all of the Douglas County attorneys, and all of the Douglas County Public Defender's attorneys in a structure that's 12 stories tall, matching this structure, which is what we're in today, the city county building, so that you'd have basically twin towers of 12 stories each on a footprint that we already own, and would allow us to encompass all of the offices that are currently spread throughout this complex under one roof, connected to this complex by a skywalk across Harney Street. The discussion of this will take place in more detail tomorrow, because tonight what we're basically talking about is the juvenile justice home, the Douglas County Youth Center at 42nd and Woolworth Street. This is it. It sits in the middle of an extensive Douglas County-owned campus that runs from Woolworth Street on the south to Pacific Street on the north, Field Club Golf Course on the east, 42nd Street on the west, sandwiched between 2 residential neighborhoods, the Field Club neighborhood and the Morton Meadows neighborhood. It's been there since at least the 1950s. It's been upgraded over that period of time, but not since the 90s. When this particular facility in the middle, which is a gym, was added with some upgrades of the surrounding facilities. And so it needs refurbishment. It was designed in its current form to house about 140 children. It currently, as you heard, houses about 80 children. So obviously there's room in here to be repurposed for other needs. And we've done extensive research into best practices of youth centers around the country, pretty much from coast to coast. And what we've found is this meets many of the prime demands, best practices of modern youth center. Most notably, it's in a residential area. The alternative says bring the kids downtown and put them in essentially a cell block downtown. This has the potential for green space outside where kids can go and actually play soccer, frisbee, throw a ball around. And the downtown alternative does not. It's simply a cell block with no outside capacity. This resides in a residential neighborhood in Midtown Omaha. The downtown alternative resides a block and a half from the Douglas County Corrections Center, which is absolutely the last place that we want the children to go to. And this is a neighbor to our county-owned Douglas County Health Center, which potentially could provide much-needed health services to the children in our care. So, what we propose is to take this facility and repurpose it. It's got a lot of concrete where there doesn't need to be concrete, where there could be green space. This is a football and a half-sized field directly to the north of the existing facility that could be repurposed as an outdoor campus for the children who are going to spend on the average of 50 days with us. This is one of the findings of the Chin report, which says give the kids a outlook of nature, give them light, give them fresh air, make it look more like a junior high school than a corrections center. We don't call this a detention center, and the alternative is called a detention center for good reason, because there's nothing to do there except be detained. We call this a youth center. We don't think that the children that are there primarily to be detained. We think the children that are there are primarily there to be educated and rehabilitated. We're there to help them. And so in order to do that, we wanted to make it as normal as possible. If you're a 15, 16-year-old kid, your school looks a lot like this. And we can make it look more like your school, we can make it act more like your school, and we can put programs in there that will be identical to your school, so that when you leave our care after 50 days or so, you can transition back into school without big academic, social, or other problems. That's a win for society. Transition back to school. Go back to being a good student. Graduate. Become a citizen that contributes to society, rather than process through a correction system and become another number at the Douglas County Correction Center, a burden to society. That's the purpose of this. This is an educational rehabilitation unit that we call the youth center. The alternative is a detention center that's basically a cell block. On top of that, this, and we've had experts in the business, every bit as good as the people who have proposed what is probably now $160 million plus proposal downtown, price this out. And in the Chin report, which is the last best numbers proposed by the people who want to bring this downtown and build the cell block, the detention center that they propose down here on the property that they want to take through eminent domain at a price tag of $37 million. The best number that we were able to get from people who do this for a living on this facility, totally redone and repurposed, with health care provided, with education provided, with dental provided, with outdoor recreation provided, is about $14 million. More than $20 million less. This is smarter, better for the children, and cheaper for the taxpayers. Why wouldn't we do this? So what we're proposing as a first step is stop eminent domain. If we stop the eminent domain, we move towards refurbishing property that we already own. Rather than taking someone's property, we repurpose property that we already own. This is what the gym looks like today. This is what we could make it look like with some of that $14 million. And somebody pointed out, well, yeah, they're not only playing basketball, it looks like you've got some yoga people in there too. That's really an update. But we could do a lot of things that we don't do currently in a refurbished youth center. This is the health center clinic today. It's very small, very rudimentary, and doesn't provide an MD doctor, doesn't provide an adolescent psychiatrist, doesn't provide dental care, doesn't provide an optometrist. It's basically like going to the nursing station, except the kids are here all the time for 50 days. My kids go to the dentist kind of within a 50-day period, and if they get sick, they might end up at the doctor during a 50-day. And if they had emotional, psychological problems, we'd probably get somebody in that field to see them within the 50 days. And if they break their glasses, we'd probably get their glasses replaced within that 50 days. All of that can exist, and we could have a facility that had a first-class dental, optical, health, psychological clinic in it for part of that $14 million. Better for the kids. This is what the educational unit looks like now, and it's a little dour, I guess you would say. It's small, it's cramped, it's not very well lit, doesn't have a lot of natural light. This is what we anticipate transitioning to, which is open, looks more like the schools that our kids go to than a correctional institution, has some outdoor lighting, and has all the amenities of modern secondary education in our community. We can do this for part of that $14 million, better for our kids. This is what the housing units in our Douglas County Youth Center currently look like. Again, nothing's pretty much been changed since the mid-1990s. A couple of these, as you heard, have been decommissioned because our good news, population has gone down. We're not at 140 anymore, we're more like around 80. So we can take some of these, because they're vacant, and repurpose them to other things, educational things, health things, recreation things. But we can also take these living units and make them look more like this. These kids are just kids. They're in school. We need to have this look more like a boarding school with security than a detention cell block. This is a place where maybe if you were to go away to school someplace, you might end up in. This is a cell block. And this has outdoor lighting, it has a view of nature, it has a warmer feel, and it's more conducive to what we want these kids to feel like, students. Maybe students with problems, maybe students who are in need of a little rehabilitation, but essentially kids in junior high and high school. We don't want them to feel like they're on their way to a lifetime behind bars. Better, cheaper, smarter. Better for the kids, cheaper for the taxpayer, smarter for everybody. That's what we're proposing. It can be done. What we need to do first is stop eminent domain. Slow this process down, take a deep breath. It needs to be done right, not quick, because once we do it, it's going to be here for a long, long time. And we need to put the whole thing on the ballot and let people vote on it. We've done this. We're doing this now. The public safety bond that you heard about is the exact model that we're doing now. It works. Better, cheaper, smarter. So tomorrow, when Commissioner Boyle proposes his resolutions, I hope that some of you can be involved in that, because it's an important thing. What he's doing is the first step to achieving this, which is going a long way to doing a better thing for our kids. The bottom line is downtown detention center, new construction, $37 million. Youth center, campus remodel, $14 million. I think this is better, cheaper, smarter than anybody can understand. We're going to keep talking about this and make it happen. So thanks for coming down. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, starting with my colleague.
Well, the only thing I'd like to add to that is that if you're coming down tomorrow, park in the parking garage next door, and we'll see each get a pass to get in and get out, because some of you have had to run down and plug meters, which is no way to run a show. So we'll take care of that. Just come up to see me or Jim, and we'll have passes for you. Don't go to anybody else. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll get you a pass. So, but I want to thank Jim very much. This really came about for me very quickly, and speak quickly, is that I started listening. I went to some meetings and listened to some people, citizens who started talking to me, and I started asking questions, and I wasn't getting real good answers. So I really got into it and started talking to Jim, and went out to see him a couple times in his law office and saw some plans and so forth. And I think it's time we take a walk back on the condemnation. I think we need to consider postponing the project entirely until we hear from citizens throughout the county. We have a lot of stakeholders from CASA all the way to parents of children who have parents of children in the system. We have a whole lot of people that should be heard from. And so I want to do that. In addition, I think it makes a lot more sense to be doing this on-site where we presently are. Anyway, I think that this is the way to go, and I think I felt when I got new information that I should change my position. And I think that's, it's not real easy. I'm kind of getting hammered here and there, but it's better than getting hammered like I was before. So thanks a lot, and I'll be talking about it.
So there you have it in a nutshell, and we're here for a dialogue. So if any of you have any questions, observations, anything? Oh, come up. We're trying to run this on time, so please limit yourself to about a minute if you could.
Hi. Thank you very much. It's a very nice meeting tonight. Very well prepared. I think I asked you south of the existing juvenile center.
Larry, I know your name, but could you give it for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue. But don't we have a social services campus just south of the juvenile center now?
Yeah, we have, I think it's, is it about a 15-acre campus in total?
13 to 15, I believe.
13 to 15 acres, and it houses, in addition to the Douglas County Youth Center, the Douglas County Health Center, Douglas County Health Department, HHS has an office there. There's a variety of services, all on property that we own.
But south across Center Street, there's what used to be the Center Shopping Center?
Correct.
Isn't that largely a social services campus?
If I may, I believe there's some lay space in there by the VA.
Maybe they moved out, but it used to
Well,
be an awful lot.
they're in the transition of, they're going to be
My
doing
point being that
their construction.
the families, a lot of families have access to social service agencies that are in that complex just across the street.
It's a central location, it's a great location, and thank you, Larry. I mean, part of this whole thing is location, location, location. I mean, my gosh, you can't look at these two proposals in terms of 18th Street down here, a cell block, and Field Club neighborhood, a campus, and say that they're even close. So you're exactly right. There's all kinds of amenities there. It's on a bus line. It allows for room for expansion, and we own it. So, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
With that lawsuit with the owner of the building, did he file a lawsuit?
Right, there is currently a temporary restraining order that stops the eminent domain that Douglas County is engaged in. Commissioner Boyle and I want us to stop it completely. The courts have it now, so it's been temporarily stopped, and a hearing will be had. It hasn't been set yet.
Can we get your name for the record, please?
Catherine.
Okay, one at a time, but we got about 3 or 4 more, and that'll be great.
Luis Jimenez. Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street.
Okay.
I'm still concerned about the reduction of beds to 48. And I'm thinking, well, what about one year we have an economic downturn and there's more kids in the street?
Right.
With this, how are we going to deal with that? But I'm concerned about sending kids out of the county. Is there a possibility ever of sending kids out of the state? gonna be my
Well,
question.
we currently do place children, the court places children outside of the state of Nebraska. The point of the whole beds thing is, obviously, everybody wants to have as few children in our care as possible. I mean, in a perfect world, you don't need a youth center. In a perfect world, you don't need a correctional center. We don't live in a perfect world. So how do we get this down to as few as possible? And we've done what we could, I think, getting it from 140 down to about 80. But there's a limit. And so just because you want it to be lower, and so you build it at half capacity of our current capacity, doesn't mean that you're going to be at half capacity of our current capacity. You raise a valid question. What do you do with the rest of those children? And there are no valid answers by the people who advocate for a much smaller capacity. We'd like to see the capacity go down. It has gone down. And here's the thing. We've gone from 140 some to 80 some in the current facility. We can go from 80 to 40 in the current facility. I mean, there's no reason to build a new cell block to go down. We've already proven, using the facility that we've got, we can go down. As a matter of fact, it's a boon because the areas that have been decommissioned, if you will, can be repurposed for better educational, rehabilitation, and healthcare purposes. We can put dental chairs in there. We can put, you know, an eyeglass place in there. We can do things educationally for the children that makes their stay with us more productive and more educational. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Tyler Wilson. I live here in Omaha. This question is kind of for you, Mr. Alexander. You're the expert. You have more experience at the youth center in your pinky than everyone in this room combined, right? So I'm curious, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I kind of want to know. In your professional opinion, what would be best practices for the youth? Building it downtown at the current proposal or leaving it where it is at this new?
And I appreciate your question. I've specifically, I think, tried to point out to people, this is not Mr. Alexander's decision. And I told him when I requested that he came here, we're not asking for your opinion on options like this. I have an opinion, and Commissioner Boyle has an opinion, but it's not fair to the directors, the people that work here, to put them on the spot. It's not going to be their decision.
Right.
And so you're exactly right. He's an expert, and I'm sure in his heart of hearts he probably does have an opinion, but we're not going to put him on the spot here tonight to come out with that. If you want my opinion, you heard it.
Right.
And I think the same with Commissioner Boyle. We will make that decision. We're the decision makers here, and we'll take that responsibility.
Right.
So thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We got one or two more, and then.
Terrell McKinney, 4948 Sparta Street. I wanted to know, when is the county going to really think about the preventative measures and put investment into keeping kids from going into these facilities and thinking about community-based alternatives that would actually help? Because I don't think no kid should be put in a prison.
That's a great question, and it goes to the very heart of what we're talking about. Things like detention centers, things like correctional centers, are a sign of a certain failure, you know, as a society. And we should try to do better so that we minimize the necessity of having those. I mean, I don't think we ever get to a perfect world. I mean, we're going to need places to hold people who are dangerous or whatever. And we're going to need places to hold children who have no other place to go. It's our responsibility to care for our children. But that said, there are better practices that we've looked at. I mean, part of this process has led us on an educational journey to find the best practices around the country, and really there are some remarkable ones. Part of those solutions have informed our project, and part of it is, all right, you want your care for these children to be more educational so that you can transition them back to whatever high school or junior high school they came from, and they will not be a month behind or 50 days behind in their academics. But more than that, I mean, these are regular, normal kids by and large. They need regular, normal stuff in their life. You know, they need summer jobs. They need the ability to be trained for productive futures. They need to have literacy and computer skills and things that will allow them to compete in the future and be productive citizens. And we're in the process of building this and then putting programs inside of it, programs that we don't have now, that will improve that ability to keep these kids not going to the youth center, but back in school doing what they should be doing academically and graduating. So,
Jim?
you're a great point.
Can I make just a comment? I've heard you ask this question several times, and this is the first time I have a chance to answer it to the best of my ability. I have my niece's son is in prison, and he is, unfortunately, just grew out of his juvenile status, so he's an adult. And he has some disabilities going on. He's easily led. And he went to a school unnamed, but he would go in with some friends. He'd go in the front door, go out the back door, and they'd jack around all day long. And he had a very loving mother, loving grandmother, my sister-in-law. And really a family that embraced him and gave him all sorts of support, including me. And I knew what was going on with him. My wife's from a family of 12, so there's lots of people to literally surround him. And he still got off the rails. And the last time he was out messing around with these guys, they were robbing a place, and when they walked in, they handed him the gun. And he's in penitentiary now. He comes from a loving family, had every opportunity, but there's something troubling him somewhere. And in spite of all the care he received, mental health care is where it didn't straighten out. I'd be glad to talk to you further, but it's such a disjointed situation. You know, many of these young people are coming from homes that are very troubled. Some, like I believe, that's coming from my niece's home, that's not troubled. But it happens, so we need to figure that out. But I'll tell you, there's a great story in the World Herald recently about the Salvation Army a couple of days ago, about some kids that were really in a mess, and the Salvation Army pulled them out. I think, frankly, we should be contracting with the Salvation Army. They have done remarkable work, so I'll be glad to talk to you privately or publicly in another way. It's a real tragedy. These kids go off the rails and you don't know why. So I'd be glad to talk to you, though.
Thank you. You have one more?
Jim.
Mr. Corbin?
Jim.
Oh, sorry. Two more. Okay, and then you, and then we have to wrap it. Jim, please.
Mariah Person. My main curiosity is when are these amenities and programs going to be written out in a proposal so that people can at least review these thoughts and know that they're actually solidified and being pursued to an official point?
That's a great question, because it's not only the buildings, it's what goes on inside the buildings. Yeah, the question is, when are these programs, these alternatives that we're talking about to help keep children from going into these things or staying out of these things, when are they going to be outlined for the public? When are we going to discuss those? And, you know, what that goes to is, if you build a youth center, that's great, might look great, but what goes on inside there is every bit or more important than what it looks like. And so we've spent a lot of time, as I said, looking at best practices, programs that have worked around the country. But there hasn't been enough public discussion. I mean, this series of hearings, I think this is the 8th hearing of this committee, is virtually all the discussion that's been had publicly on this entire important matter. And what we keep saying is more public discussion. We need to have that discussion, however long it takes. We need to do this right, not quick. So what you're talking about, that day will come, hopefully. It hasn't come yet. And it's not just a hearing. It's going to have to be a robust community discussion. The great thing about tonight is, it's like John Adams said, democracy really is at its best in the town hall. And so what we're doing tonight, this is like pure democracy. This is the best that we can do. And more of these will get us to where you're talking about. But that's a great point. Okay, sir, one last, give me a break. We'll do one more. Okay.
David Corbin, 1002 North 49th Street. I've been living in Omaha for 38 years. I salute the efforts that you're making with the alternative plan. And I've been involved with projects by Omaha by Design. And I just want to read a couple of, I'm not representing Omaha by Design, but I like what they say about what should be happening. And so first it says, advocate for best practices and excellence in urban design and policy. And I think that's part of what you outlined here tonight. There are 4 of them, but I'm only going to read one more. Encourage engagement in urban design and policy. Collaboratively encourage, develop, and implement methods by which the public and other sectors can provide timely, relevant input at an earlier stage in planning and development processes. And I think that's why we're here tonight. I wish it could have been earlier, but I think we're moving in the right direction, and thank you.
Thank you. Folks, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I'll be around a little later if you want to talk, but we've got, I know Commissioner Boyle's got obligations, and I do too, and it's a school night. Come on. So thanks for coming. I try to get these things in and out in an hour. We made it in an hour 15, and I think that's real progress. We'll be back. This is a good start on what I think could be an excellent discussion on this important topic. Better to do it right than to do it quick, and we just showed a smarter, better, cheaper way to go. So let's keep working on this and we'll get it right. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, come tomorrow at 9 a.m. For the Stop the Eminent Domain.
Do we know where we are on the agenda for tomorrow?
Well, it is available out there. Currently, it's dead last. So,
Can you make a
we'll see if we
motion?
can get, the chairman has the discretion to move.
Make a motion to bring the public hearing sooner.
Well, I did just that. Louis suggested, I emailed Commissioner Rogers this afternoon, and also Patrick Bloomingdale, the Chief Administrative Officer, has as well, to ask him to move those up to the front. The trouble is, it looks like we're not going to get it right at the beginning. I expect a big, oh no, after I say this, the weed board's going to report again. And I'm not joking. Anyway, hopefully it'll be shorter.
What's your best guess?
I think it'll probably be anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes into the meeting. We have board of equalization that apparently is not that busy. Then we have these other things that I want to get rid of. But I did ask him to move it up as quickly as he can and to the top. I also said if we run into the city council at 1 o'clock, but I don't want to go to 903, I want to go to the cafeteria downstairs where it's more accessible and easier sitting, and there's a pop machine next door and all that stuff. We're going to go down there if we can, because there's no reason why we have to get stuffed up in 903, okay? But I do appreciate your question. It was very timely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.